Adult life gives you maybe 10 or 20 free hours a week, and your backlog is already a graveyard of games you swore you'd finish. Stop feeding it, and let's fix the ratio. Here are 20 RPGs that are actually worth your time.
Now, we have a glimmer of hope. A gift of tremendous power has been given to one of us.
Here's the thing about CRPGs built on tabletop systems. Most sand down the complexity until it barely resembles the source material. Wrath of the Righteous does the opposite. It throws the full weight of Pathfinder's rule set at you. 10 classes, dozens of subclasses, mythic paths letting you ascend into an angel, a demon, or something stranger entirely. It's dense, a little intimidating at first, and the character creator alone could eat an evening before you've even left the tutorial. Once it clicks though, the tactical depth is unlike almost anything else in the genre. Turn-based combat where positioning, buffs, and resistances actually matter instead of just sitting there as window dressing.
The Crusade management layer adds a strategic minigame on top of everything else, which sounds thrilling or exhausting, depending entirely on your appetite for spreadsheets and army logistics. Either way, this is built for people who read patch notes for fun, and it rewards patience like few CRPGs even attempt to. Stick with it past the opening hours, and the payoff is substantial. If Wrath of the Righteous buried you in dice rolls and mythic path decisions, get ready to trade all that structure for pure sensory overload instead. Cyberpunk 2077 drops you into Night City, a place so densely packed with neon and noise it practically vibrates around you. The FPS RPG hybrid combat lets you go full netrunner, hacking cameras and turrets, or just punch through enemies with a pair of monowire fists, your call entirely, and the game rarely punishes you for switching things up mid-run. Night City does a lot of heavy lifting here, selling verticality and grime in a way few open worlds manage convincingly. The launch stumbles are old news at this point. Years of patches and the Phantom Liberty expansion turned this into one of the most polished open-world RPGs on the market today. Keanu Reeves as Johnny Silverhand living rent-free in your head adds a strange, compelling wrinkle to the whole experience. It's messy in the best way, ambitious to a fault, and still one of the most atmospheric cities ever built for a game, patches or no patches.
Balance, friendship.
8 new travelers embark on a journey through the land of Celestia.
Picture a tiny pixel art hero standing at a cliff's edge, and behind them, a sprawling, painterly landscape stretches out with lighting that looks almost photographic. That contrast, old-school sprites against modern lighting tech, is basically the whole visual identity of Octopath Traveler II. 8 protagonists, 8 separate stories that barely intersect for most of the run, each with wildly different tones, ranging from revenge thrillers to slice-of-life comedy and everything between. The break and boost combat system rewards paying attention to enemy weaknesses, turning fights into little puzzles rather than plain button mashing against a health bar that never reacts to what you do. Some players find the disconnected narratives frustrating, since party members rarely acknowledge each other outside scripted moments. A fair criticism, and one of the few real knocks against it overall once the novelty wears off. But as a pure demonstration of what turn-based JRPG combat and presentation can look like right now, it's hard to find something more confident in its own identity than this game manages to be. Chapter after chapter, story after story.
I found it, at last, the 7th source.
We need to find more resources, but that takes people, and we can't wake them up.
Most games that promise your choices matter give you maybe 2 endings and call it a day. Across 3 full games, Mass Effect tracks who lived, who died, what alliances you built, and folds all of it into a save file that carries consequences forward for dozens of hours. Shepard's journey against the Reapers spans galaxies, species, and some tough calls without a clean right answer anywhere in sight. Combat evolves noticeably across the Trilogy too, tightening from the clunkier first game into the much snappier cover shooter feel of the 3rd entry. The Legendary Edition cleaned up plenty of rough edges from the originals, rebalancing systems and smoothing textures without touching what made the writing land so well in the first place. Companions like Garrus and Tali became beloved for a reason. The writing team understood a crew needs personality, not just combat utility bolted onto a stat sheet. Few trilogies manage this scale while still making individual player choices feel weighty, and fewer still stick the landing this well after so many hours of build-up and payoff.
O Shaman of Salvation.
Granblue Fantasy Relink is proof that a mobile gacha game can spin off into something surprisingly excellent. This started as a browser RPG, and somehow it evolved into a tight, satisfying action combat game with a full campaign and endgame raid content, rivaling dedicated action titles outright. Combat feels weighty and responsive, each character playing distinctly enough that switching between them changes your entire approach to a fight. The boss encounters are the real highlight. Multi-phase battles demanding you actually learn attack patterns instead of just mashing through them blindly and hoping for the best. Visually, it leans into a warm, painterly anime style that holds up shockingly well during the chaos of a 4-player raid. Post-launch support has stayed consistent too, adding new characters, weapons, and quests at a pace that keeps things feeling fresh well after launch week wore off. It's not trying to reinvent action RPGs, but what it does with a level of polish that catches a lot of people off guard entirely, especially anyone expecting a quick cash-in built purely on the source material's name.
You hear me? For crushing that dream.
After the raid boss adrenaline of Relink, here's a completely different kind of hook. One built around calendars, social links, and stealing hearts through dungeons made of pure psychology. Persona 5 Royal splits its time between daily life sim mechanics, managing friendships, grades, and part-time jobs, and stylish turn-based combat inside surreal palaces built from a target's twisted desires. The style here does a lot of work, from the jazz-infused soundtrack to menus that feel like flipping through an art book someone actually cared about. Royal adds a full third semester and a new character, reshaping the back half of the story in a way the original PS4 release never had the chance to. Combat rewards exploiting elemental weaknesses and chaining all-out attacks, which stays satisfying even 100 hours deep into a save file with dozens of confidants still to build. It's a long game, no way around that, but the pacing rarely drags because there's always some social obligation, some deadline, some tiny errand pulling you forward, whether you're ready for it or not.
Here we go.
The 3 children of our patriarch are even more ruthless than he is.
There's a recurring problem with choice-driven RPGs. They promise consequences, then quietly reset the world, so nothing you did actually sticks. Wasteland 3 doesn't do that. Kill the wrong faction leader, and you might lose an entire quest line, an ally, or access to a whole region for the rest of the game, permanently. No do-overs. Set in a frozen, post-apocalyptic Colorado, it's a squad-based tactical RPG where your desert rangers can die permanently if you're careless with positioning. The tone leans darkly comedic, undercutting the bleak setting with writing that doesn't take itself too seriously most of the time, which helps the harder moments land. Combat plays out on a grid, with cover, action points, and specialist builds mattering more than raw stats alone ever could. It's rough around the edges technically, and the difficulty spikes can feel unfair early on, especially before your squad finds its footing. But few games commit this hard to making your decisions actually reshape the world around you, and that commitment is worth the occasional bruise along the way.
Democracy, equality, and freedom.
To absorb on your first day.
Can't believe I'm here.
Imagine flicking your wrist and watching a spell arc across a courtyard, shattering a training dummy while students mill around a castle that feels properly lived in. That's the opening hours of Hogwarts Legacy in a nutshell. Set generations before the books, it lets you build a custom student and actually attend Hogwarts as an open-world RPG, complete with class schedules, room of requirement customization, and a spell-crafting combat system that gets surprisingly deep over time. Combat starts simple, but layers in combo potential once you unlock the darker spells, mixing curses with control effects in ways that feel almost like a twisted magic ballet. The castle itself is the star, packed with secret passages and moving staircases, rewarding just wandering instead of fast-traveling everywhere constantly out of habit. The open-world side quests occasionally feel like padding, sure, and some fetch quest fatigue sets in by the mid-game once the initial wonder fades a little. But the core fantasy of actually being a Hogwarts student lands better here than in almost any prior attempt at this license has managed, patchy side content and all.
I'm afraid you're on your own.
Von Valancius for generations. The spinners, two fought together.
Most CRPGs set in established universes soften the edges to be more approachable, trimming away whatever makes the source material actually distinct. Rogue Trader refuses to do that entirely.
This is Warhammer 40k at full, uncompromising intensity, a grim, Baroque universe where the Emperor is worshipped as a literal god, and your choices as a rogue trader captain ripple across star systems, for better or worse. Combat shifts between real-time exploration and turn-based tactical battles, with classes ranging from psychers warping reality to melee brutes charging through cover without a second thought.
The writing leans hard into the setting's theatrical excess, and it works because it never winks at the audience or apologizes for how strange it all is. Ship-to-ship combat adds another tactical layer on top of ground battles, a nice bit of variety that keeps the pace from stalling. It's a lot to absorb if you're new to the universe, no denying that, and the codex entries alone could keep you busy for hours. But for anyone curious about 40k, this might be the most confident on-ramp yet made available.
Sephiroth?
It's time.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth takes roughly the second third of the original 1997 classic and expands it into an open-world epic that somehow doesn't feel bloated despite its scale. Exploring the grasslands outside Midgar, chocobo racing, card games, and a dozen other side activities sit alongside a main story, building towards some gut-punch moments longtime fans have waited decades to see rendered properly at last. Combat carries over the real-time meets ATB hybrid from Remake, but expands the roster and synergy abilities, so team-based combos feel essential, rather than optional busy work stapled onto the fighting. The environments range from lush plains to industrial wastelands, each with a distinct visual identity, keeping the 80-plus hour runtime from feeling repetitive stretch after stretch. Some side content does feel like classic open-world filler, tower climbs and collectibles you've seen 100 times before in other games, and a few mini-games overstay their welcome. Still, when the main story hits its major beats, it's hard to think of many RPGs landing emotional weight this effectively, or this consistently, across such a sprawling runtime.
The reunion, when worlds merge.
After the sprawling cinematic highs of Rebirth, here's a hard tonal swing into something brutal, punishing, and almost stubbornly old school by design. Nioh 2 takes the Souls-like formula and bolts on a deep loot system and stance-switching combat, rewarding obsessive optimization over patient exploration instead. You're a half-yokai warrior in a supernatural retelling of feudal Japan, cutting through demons with a stance system, high, mid, low, that changes your speed, power, and openings on the fly. The key pulse mechanic, timing a button press to recover stamina after every attack, becomes second nature eventually, but the learning curve is steep going in and doesn't ease up much. Build variety is where this really separates from its peers, with wildly different weapon types, yokai abilities, and soul cores, letting you construct distinct playstyles suited to your temperament. It's unforgiving and demands real commitment from anyone playing it. No shortcuts available, no easy difficulty to fall back on. But for players wanting their action RPGs mechanically dense rather than narratively driven, few games reward mastery this thoroughly or this consistently. There's a long-running frustration with JRPG combat systems feeling stiff, like you're fighting the interface as much as the enemy in front of you. Tales of Arise fixes that almost entirely. Combat here is fluid, fast, and cinematic in a way the series has rarely managed before, with combo strings chaining smoothly between characters and boost strike finishers rewarding you for reading the flow of a fight. The story follows an oppressed people fighting back against their occupiers, and while some pacing dips in the middle act, the character writing carries it through regardless of the slower stretches. Visually, the game uses a painterly art style, giving it a distinct look compared to most anime RPGs, closer to an illustrated storybook than a typical cel-shaded aesthetic. The cast dynamics land well too, with real chemistry between party members explored during downtime skits scattered between missions and campsites. It's not the longest entry in the genre, but the tighter runtime means less filler and a much more consistent pace throughout the whole story arc, from start to finish. Picture hurling a bicycle at an enemy's head in the middle of a turn-based battle, or summoning a swarm of angry crabs as a special attack. That's a Tuesday in Yakuza Like a Dragon. The series made a wild pivot from real-time brawling to full turn-based JRPG combat here, and somehow it works better than it has any right to. Ichiban Kasuga, the new protagonist, sees himself as the hero of a JRPG, which explains why every job class and combat animation leans into absurd, over-the-top spectacle constantly and without apology. Kamurocho and Yokohama are packed with side content. Karaoke, batting cages, a full business management minigame that could eat dozens of hours on their own easily. The main story balances that comedy with real heartfelt drama about loyalty and found family, a tonal tightrope the series has always walked well and continues to nail here. It's a bold reinvention that respects what came before while charting an entirely new mechanical direction for the whole franchise going forward, one that's stuck around ever since.
After our parents passed away, it was my responsibility to keep Nioh safe.
Punishing difficulty usually just alienates players, driving them off before a game's systems even get a chance to click properly. Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance turns that difficulty into the entire appeal. The press-turn combat system punishes sloppy play instantly, but rewards careful weakness exploitation with extra turns that can wipe an enemy team before they even act once. Demon negotiation and fusion form the backbone of progression, recruiting and combining creatures to build exactly the resistances and skills upcoming fights demand of you.
The Vengeance update adds a substantial new story path alongside a sharper translation and rebalanced encounters, making this the definitive version of an already dense game overall. Visually, it renders a post-apocalyptic Tokyo overtaken by demons, with a bleak, striking art direction suiting the tone perfectly throughout. This isn't a forgiving game, and it never pretends to be one, not even for a minute, even on the easier difficulty settings. But for players wanting strategy to actually matter every single turn, few RPGs deliver that tension this consistently, or reward careful planning this generously.
You get it!
You can see clearly that the world is fractured now.
Swap out demon negotiation for something far more primal. Tracking, wounding, and eventually taking down a massive living creature, reacting intelligently to everything you throw at it. Monster Hunter World builds its entire identity around that hunt. 14 weapon types offer wildly different combat rhythms, from the deliberate weight of the greatsword to the acrobatic aerial combos of the insect glaive, and everything in between. Monsters here aren't just health bars. They migrate between zones, fight each other, and change behavior as fights progress, making every hunt feel like an actual ecosystem interaction, rather than a scripted boss fight. The crafting and gear progression loop is deep enough to swallow hundreds of hours, especially once you're chasing specific armor sets for late-game builds and optimal stat lines. The learning curve is real, and early hunts can feel clumsy before the mechanics click into place properly and the weapon choice starts making sense. Once they do, though, few games make combat against a single creature feel this tactically rich and rewarding over the long haul, hunt after hunt after hunt. For years, fans of the Persona series wondered what the same writing and combat sensibilities would look like transplanted into a full fantasy setting. Metaphor ReFantazio finally answers that question, and it delivers about as well as anyone could have hoped for going in. The turn-based combat borrows the weakness exploitation rhythm Atlas has refined for years, but layers in a job system called archetypes, letting you customize builds far more than prior entries allowed. The story tackles political ambition and prejudice with surprising bite, following a protagonist campaigning to become king in a world where fantasy races face real discrimination. Visually, it's stunning, mixing painterly character portraits with a striking, almost storybook aesthetic during exploration sequences across the map that rarely repeats itself. The social link equivalent here, called Followers, ties directly into gameplay bonuses rather than existing purely for flavor text on a menu screen. It's ambitious, dense, and clearly the work of a team that knew exactly what made their prior work special all along, then pushed further with it than anyone really expected.
You dreamt of utopia. You saw the tribes united.
Open-world bloat is a real problem in modern gaming. Maps stuffed with icons existing purely to pad playtime rather than reward curiosity. Odyssey has plenty of that same padding, question marks scattered across ancient Greece by the dozen, and yet it somehow makes the sprawl addictive anyway, hour after hour. Playing as either Cassandra or Alexios, you're a mercenary navigating the Peloponnesian War, with a branching dialogue system and choices meaningfully shifting relationships and story outcomes as you go. Combat shifted toward a full RPG structure here, with skill trees, gear stats, and ability-based special attacks replacing the more streamlined combat of earlier entries in the series. The setting itself does a lot of heavy lifting, recreating Greek islands, city-states, and mythology with a level of detail rewarding just sailing around and exploring freely, no destination required. It's a long game that could easily be trimmed by 20 hours, no argument there, and the pacing sags in the back third. But rarely has an open world been this gorgeous to just wander through, question marks and all. I can't really say too much here without spoiling something, so bear with the vagueness for a minute. This is, without much exaggeration, the standard against which other JRPGs should be measured. The world is gorgeous, painted in warm, storybook colors, making every region feel distinct and worth exploring at your own pace instead of rushing through. The characters, especially your companions, are written with a level of care that makes their arcs land emotionally, rather than feeling like obligatory backstory dumps stapled onto the plot. Side quests never fall into that repetitive fetch quest trap so many RPGs lean on. Each one tends to have its own small, satisfying payoff worth the detour and the extra travel time. And the main story? This is where it really separates itself, is paced in a way that constantly makes you want to keep pushing forward just to see what happens next, something a surprising number of games in this genre struggle to pull off well or consistently. If you've somehow missed this one, fix that immediately. Seriously.
New character-focused stories dedicated to each member of your party.
And use the environment to their advantage. Study enemy behavior.
Picture a boss arena that shifts shape mid-fight, floors collapsing and walls rearranging as the creature you're battling adapts its attack patterns in real time. That's a signature moment in Remnant II, a game mashing together Souls-like combat with third-person shooting in a way that shouldn't work as well as it does. Procedurally generated worlds mean your playthrough won't match anyone else's exactly, pulling from a pool of dungeons, bosses, and quest lines that shuffle each run-through completely. Build variety comes from archetypes and rings stacking together into wild combinations, letting you lean into gunplay, melee, or some hybrid, depending on what you actually find along the way and what synergies click. Co-op support for up to 3 players makes this one of the better games in the genre to tackle with friends, since encounters scale to accommodate extra guns joining the fight. It's dense with secrets and easy to miss content on a first run through the campaign. Few action games reward replaying quite this consistently, or with this much variety waiting under the surface. After Remnant's tight procedural gunplay, here's the genre's absolute ceiling for freedom and reactivity. A game where nearly every solution you can imagine has already been accounted for by the writers. Baldur's Gate 3 adapts D&D 5th edition rules into turn-based combat, rewarding creative problem-solving as much as raw stats, letting you talk, sneak, or fight your way through nearly any encounter you meet along the road. The writing is dense with reactivity, companions remembering choices dozens of hours later in ways that feel organic rather than scripted at all. Combat leans on positioning, environmental interaction, and spell combos, turning even simple fights into little tactical puzzles if you let it happen naturally. The sheer scope of Act 1 alone rivals entire other RPGs, and the game only expands from there once you leave the wilderness behind. It's not a short commitment, and the back half shows some rougher pacing compared to the polish of the opening hours. Still, for pure player agency, few RPGs come close to matching what this one pulls off. That's it for the list. Hit the comments and tell me which of these you've already sunk 100 hours into, or which one's next. And check out this video on the screen if you're chasing great writing over combat. I'll see you on the next one.